Happy Sunday to you all. My name is KJ Hamus, and I'm really excited to be bringing you this Sunday yin practice. Apologies, my leg is very itchy right now. But yin is a great time for us to not only settle into the body, but to reflect truly on what we need and what best serves us. If you were able to take Friday's practice, I started talking about this idea of sovereignty and sovereignty in our own body. And this really has been something on my mind lately as a colleague of mine, Naomi, brought it up in a practice that I was able to participate in with them. And it really has kind of been this experience like, oh, how do I have ownership over my own body and ownership over what I need from the practice. So thinking about that tonight is a continuation of that lesson from Naomi and from our practice on Friday. As we move throughout the practice tonight, I'll be offering up, as always, a variety of options for you to take in the different shapes that we're going to begin to make. And really the options are a way for you to decide what best serves you and what you might need, and what your goals are for the practice. So what may feel good in my body may not feel good in your body. And so it's best to be able to adjust for that and know that there's no right or wrong way to do the shape. And so wherever you're at, we want to meet you, where that space is. So keeping all of that in mind, make sure you've got all of the things that are going to help you feel really comfortable tonight in the shapes that we're taking. So I always tend to have a couple of blocks, a blanket, and at least one pillow or yoga bolster, but feel free to have more of everything. If you're like, I want all the pillows in my house, grab them all. Whatever is going to really help support you in the shapes tonight. So with that said, let's get started in any comfortable position that feels good for you. So it can be seated, this can be on your back, on your stomach. Maybe you choose legs up the wall, child's pose, anything that just really is what you need. Go ahead and take that shape here and now as I ring the bell to invite us into our practice. So feel free to close your eyes or find just a soft point for your gaze. We begin our practice by honoring the stewards of the land that we are on. Honoring the stewards who have come before us. Here in Washington, D.C., we're on Anacostan land. And just as we honor the stewards of the land, we also take a moment to honor and send gratitude to the indigenous teachers of this practice who've come before us, being reminded of the lessons they continue to teach us, and honoring the roots of yoga. This tradition stems about 5,000 years from ancient India. As we start to settle into this practice, taking a moment to acknowledge any sounds around you, whether those be external sounds or internal sounds. This can be cars or the sound of rain, maybe even a gurgling tummy. Noticing the ebb and the flow of that sound or sounds. And as we let go of those sounds, taking notice of our physical body this evening. So feel free to take a full body scan, either from the toes up to the head or vice versa. Just noticing the different joints, the different bones, the different muscles, and how that's all feeling in your body. Even the weight of your body on the mat. Does it feel light? Does it feel extra heavy tonight? Taking these observations without judgments, you can maybe start to notice the areas in the physical body that are a bit more open versus those that might need a little bit more love and compassion as you move throughout your practice. As you feel ready, begin to tune into your emotional body. Noting what is coming up or what you're bringing with you onto the mat this evening. So the emotions may be manifesting themselves in a physical fashion. They may be completely disconnected from the physical tensions or openness that you might be feeling. Just take a note, even naming them, to acknowledge them. If it feels comfortable for you and you feel like you need to, please delve into it just a little bit. As we become familiar with our emotional body, it's important to note how the emotions can affect the shapes that we take tonight. So if we're feeling potentially very tense, very anxious, the body may not be ready to open in other ways. So that's okay, and we note that and we want to work with that this evening. Or if you're feeling very positive and lighthearted, you might feel a bit more stretchy, if you will. Very technical term. And I invite you to even go a little further, acknowledging your spiritual body and whatever that brings up, and whatever you note from there. And this might be a time where you bring in a mantra or an affirmation that you're working on. You may even begin to note how the emotional body and spiritual body and even the physical body connect to our mental body at this moment. How are the thoughts taking place in the mind? Are there a lot? Are they all clustering for your attention? Or is it just thought every now and then? There's no right or wrong way to be. Just begin to note that. And even seeing if this mantra or affirmation you may be practicing can help start to soften any clustering of thoughts or any mental tightness that you might be feeling. If you'd like to start a mantra and affirmation, I recommend or invite you to take on Om, the sound of Om, the Ah, the Oo, and the the sound of all things around us. And then as you start to feel ready, begin to tap into your breath. The final layer here that we'll explore for this time. And even after we've explored the physical, the mental, the emotional, even the spiritual body, what is taking place with the breath? How is it moving in the body? How are the other bodies affecting the breath? And how is the breath affecting the other layers of the body? And if it calls to you, I invite you to begin to take a deep diaphragmatic breath, breathing in from the crown of the head down the length of the body, letting the belly, ribs, and back expand on the inhale. And then as you exhale, feeling the contraction of the belly and the back and the ribs moving back toward the spine. If that doesn't feel right to you tonight, just continue to find a calm breath, maybe breathing in and out gently through the nose, through the mouth if you'd like. And if at any point you're taking the diaphragmatic breath and you're starting to feel a shortness of breath or anxiety or anything else, suspend that breath and just let the breath return to its natural rhythm. You can always come back to it as you feel ready. At the moment, the breath may feel like it's a lot of effort, even to bring our focus to it, and that's okay. Hopefully throughout the practice, the breath becomes a little bit more effortless with time and with the opening that we might obtain from the shapes. And as you continue to settle in here, matching your breath with your mantra or your affirmation, I invite you to set an intention or focus for your practice. What do you need from your mat this evening? And what can you leave on your mat that is not serving you? Taking just several more breaths here, beginning to settle in to the space, even a bit more into the body, getting a general idea of what you may need as we move into the shapes. And as you're ready, on your next exhale, I invite you to come into a tabletop shape. We'll start with just a bit of movement here to notice the spine and begin to understand even what the spine needs for us. So don't worry too much tonight about having a perfectly straight spine or a neutral spine. Well, as we move through even our cat and cows here, inhaling, letting the belly drop, and exhale as a way to start, just working with where we're at this evening, letting the spine round or straighten as it feels right to. Do try and lead the shape from the hips, letting the gaze be the very last thing to move. And then as you'd like, you can add in any additional movement here. So you might consider circling around the wrist. If you've been doing a lot of things on the computer lately, that could feel really good here. And do make sure you go clockwise and counterclockwise. You can always draw one hip back toward one heel and take big circles that way, engaging with the wrist. If you'd like a little bit more with the wrist, you can turn the hands out to about a 9 or a 15 on a clock, taking those circles once again. Or you can even turn the fingertips towards you as much as they want to go and lean back slightly. So be very gentle, don't force anything. And you can also do the same thing with the palms facing up, leaning back slightly. Some gentle stretches for the wrist. And one of the ways we make them gentle in our own body is by just taking our time to get into the shapes and not rushing it. So we know where we might be feeling the resistance in the body and determining if that's a good place to stop, or if we're like, I can go a little bit farther, and that's what we need. So we'll be here for about another 5 or so breaths. And then as you'd like, begin to find your way into downward facing dog. So you can work in stillness in downward facing dog, or maybe movement right away calls to you. Notice, I always like to notice my shoulder as one of the first things, because sometimes if I'm holding a lot of tension in my neck or my shoulders, I just tend to round and hunch up toward the ears. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, letting the shoulders move naturally, but it can add more tension sometimes. So if that begins to describe you, maybe you adjust the width of the hands, giving yourself just a bit more space so the neck has some more room to just move freely. Maybe coming up to the toes and pressing the heels back down. And here this evening, let the back round if it wants to in the shape. Again, work with where the spine is at. There's nothing wrong with a rounded spine, nothing wrong with a straight spine, but they both do good things. So we're going to move into Drunken Warrior. And let's start on the right side, our more active side, seeing if that, if there's any extra energy or whatnot. Now, if you feel comfortable and you're like, I want to start on my left, please, 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 please do that. So as you're ready, float the leg of your choice up into the air. I'm starting with my right. And then as you exhale, cross your leg underneath your body. So this time, right underneath left. Let your back leg go. Bend it, keep it straight if that feels good to you. And think about flexing the foot, even the leg coming out directly from the hip. So you can put a great flex in the foot, or you can let it kind of go. We're working into the IT band, the outer part of the right leg. So even adjusting where your foot is at, so it might come up a little bit, it might even come down a little bit, can really change the sensation you're going to feel in the body. So you can stay lifted if you're like, yeah, that's my spot. Or you begin to come on down, whether that's to your forearms. Maybe you bring the heart all the way down to the earth. Feel free to use your pillow or your block here to add extra support, even extra softness, so you can focus on the leg. Now, you may not feel it directly in the IT band because sometimes we might be really tight in other areas, and that could be hindering our ability to really get into the IT band. So think about that as you adjust the flex in your foot with whatever works for you. So you might be feeling a light twist in the spine, looking into the leg. Just begin to sink into whether that's your forearms or your pillow, whatever calls to you. We'll be here for about 4 minutes on each side. So throughout the duration of the shape, coming back to your intention, this idea hopefully of sovereignty in your body and what exactly you need. Checking in with the physical body, the emotional body, the mental body, spiritual body, and your breath. So all parts, well, we may be looking at them individually, they all do work together. And one may be playing a bigger role than the others, and that's okay. Just be here to note that, observing anything that might come up, making the adjustments to the shape that you need to make. We want to avoid pain. So while we're going into these, holding it for longer stretches, allowing us to get into the fascia, we don't want to be in pain, which is why we don't want to force anything. So if you're feeling pain, come out of this shape a little bit, maybe even take some movement. See if that can move some of the energy around or anything that's stuck. Then try again at maybe a lesser level or with more props. Noticing any tension you might be holding in the face here. So if you're clenching the jaw, maybe move the jaw around a little bit, letting it release from the hinges. Dropping the tongue from the roof of the mouth to the bottom and softening around the eyes. Got about 1 minute left here in this shape before we let it go. On your next exhale, begin to use your hands to lift the upper body up. Maybe even taking a slight back bend here if you'd like. And then finding your way, however you choose to get there, back to downward facing dog or maybe even tabletop. If you would prefer taking cat-cows, if you're in tabletop, some other movement, maybe pedaling out the feet here. In both shapes, I invite you to find stillness at some point, just to notice what's happening between the two sides. Noticing what may have changed, what's come up in the body, and checking back in with the breath. As the breath begin to still a bit more, move toward that effortlessness, or does it feel like it's working overtime? If it's working overtime, that's okay. Maybe it's the breath practice you're taking, so if the diaphragmatic breath is making the breath just work too hard, let it go for the next side, see what happens. As you're ready, float your other leg up to the ceiling. I will be floating my left if you're following along with me. And then as you exhale, cross your left leg under the right side of the body and slide on down. Move some things around here. So again, straighten your left leg or your right leg, depending on what side you're on. Back leg will go limp, if you will. And it doesn't have to be perfectly straight, a slight bend in the knee. So really flex the foot, see how that changes it. Maybe even point the foot, see if that does something. Here to get into the side a bit more. Staying lifted, coming down to your forearms, whether that's on blocks or on the pillow, or lowering the heart down to blocks or pillow as well. Breathing here, again, we'll be here for about 4 minutes. Really check in with your nervous system here as we started taking the shapes. Does it feel like it's in fight or flight, or does it feel like it's a bit more calm? If we're doing too much, or there's, again, emotional things that we're bringing with us onto the mat, we might be in fight or flight. If that is the case, consider letting the tongue rest in the bottom of the mouth in a pool of saliva. See if that starts to slow the nervous system down a bit. But it also might be something worth exploring too, if that is coming up. We'll continue with either a diaphragmatic breath, breathing up and down the length of the body, or a more natural breath, breathing in and out through the nose. We've got a minute left in this shape before we let it go. As you're ready on your next exhale, slowly begin to lift up the torso and find your way back to downward facing dog or even tabletop if you prefer. Allowing stillness or movement in the body, whatever calls to you. Taking 3 of your own breaths here. And as you're ready, draw your knees down to the earth. Swing onto one side. Come onto your seat. So our next shape we're going to take is a half butterfly. I'm going to start with my right leg out because I'll be targeting the left side of my body. A couple of options. You can bring both legs out completely, as we'll just turn over the right leg, or you can bend the leg in. Even if you bend the leg in, don't worry about the foot needing to be perfectly flush up to your straightened leg. 3 options for what you decide to do with the upper body. Again, pillows and blocks are always great here. You may even consider sitting up on your blanket or your pillow to help find your anterior tilt in the pelvis. So our first option will just be reaching forward, holding down the center of the body, letting the back round, letting the head hang heavy, or even resting the head in the hands or on a block or on a pillow. Again, it's really okay to let the back round and work with the spine where it's at. This will start to gently open up the low back, or more intensely depending on how the back is. You may feel it a bit more in the leg. So that's option 1. Option 2 is a bit of a lateral stretch. I tend to bring a block to the outside of my right leg, resting the forearm here, and then leaning over to the side. The more you let the head hang heavy, the more you may begin to feel it along the side. So it's really up to you. So if you let the head droop, the more you're going to feel it from the neck down to your hip. So feel free to come into the I'm bored look, if you will, resting the head in the hand. And then third option is bending over the leg, the straightened leg. So again, depending on how tight the legs are, you may feel it along the back side of the leg. You may even feel it in the calf. One thing that will likely happen, but since not everybody's the same, you may feel it at varying degrees, is a stretch in the back. So if you're folding forward, you're likely going to be targeting the full back, the side, and the fold of the leg more or less going to hit your QL muscle, which is a muscle that attaches from the ribs down to the hip and can aid in our movement and our walking. So if you've been doing what I do a lot, which is hunching over and sitting, this might have gotten really tight. So that can also change that too. But again, let the back round, using the support of what you need, if it's rounding, to bring your leg closer to you. About 3 minutes left in this shape. Find your breath. Find where the breath is at in this moment. And how in this shape do you have sovereignty over your body? How in any of the shapes do you, but in particular, focus on this moment. What do you need from the shape, not the other way around? On your next exhale, as you're ready, slowly begin to lift your upper body up, taking any movement that calls to you. Maybe a counter twist. Always take a slight back bend if you want, or some neck circles. Depending on how your hips feel, you might windshield wiper your feet. Even move the jaw around if you found that you were holding some tension here. So any movement that you need, anything that calls to you. And as you're ready, we're going to start to set up on the other side. So same options available. Legs can be out completely. You can always draw the other foot in. Again, it does not have to rest perfectly flat. Work with where you're at tonight. You can fold down the center once again. The different leg out can change the sensation in the body. You may find that you can go a little bit further because you opened up the spine a little bit. Who knows? You can then bring your block, take it at a lateral space here, or folding over the leg, noting that you can also bring another block to the other forearm as well. So settling in here, taking a couple of breaths to reorienting yourself in space and time. So letting go of any distractions that might have started to creep their way back in. Even taking a moment to hug those distractions of the mind, saying thank you, I'll come back to you. And just gently, that's feeling good to you, tap back into your breath. Diaphragmatic, deeper breathing, just a gentle breath in and out through the nose. And then on your next exhale, go ahead and begin to make your way out of this side. Taking a counter twist, slight back bend, whatever movement feels good to you. From here, as you're ready, no rush, start to make your way into a puddle pose on your back or on your belly. You take about 2 minutes to just check in with ourselves, noting how we might feel. So noticing how you'll feel physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and even where the breath is at. You can also take puddle pose seated, maybe in child's pose or on your side. It's really up to you. It's just a place to start to find a bit more rest after the shapes. Even let the shapes and the movement of the energy that's been released reincorporate and reintegrate into the body in a different way. Then as you're ready, go ahead and roll onto your right side. Propping yourself up into your right hand. You may take a pillow for this next shape and just bring it behind the back. We're going to come into cat pulling its tail. The pillow is optional. You may choose not to use it after you get into the shape. But we'll start by extending out our left leg toward the just out in front of us. It's hard to see right now, but the bottom of my foot is pressed into the ground. So take a moment here and notice what happens when you press into the big toe side of the foot, where that may change this shape, working into that outer side, or if you put a bit more emphasis on pressing into the pinky edge side of the foot, does that change the shape? So 2, if the knee is feeling tender, put a slight bend in it, or even place a block underneath there. You can stay right here, lifted, and then you can start to bend your bottom leg. So depending on how the length of the arm, how the shoulder is feeling, you may choose to grab your towel or your strap to wrap around the ball of your right foot and use that item, your blanket or towel, as an extension of the hand. So don't hold it for dear life, but just use it to help you be able to open that up so we can start to feel it in the front side of our bottom leg. And you can stay here. You can come bring your head down, maybe to an extended hand, or you can start to take the twist. Again, rolling onto the pillow is totally optional. Just depending on where your spine is at, where your back feels, the pillow can bring the ground closer to you. Again, totally optional. You can let it go if you'd like. So twisting at the end of the practice can be really nice, as it can help reset the nervous system. We're working into the outer hip a bit more, even into the IT band. and into the front side of the other hip. Grabbing the bottom leg is totally optional. Again, if you don't have a strap or a towel available, let it go. And then your right hand can do whatever feels best. Be here for about 3 more minutes. And as you're ready on your next exhale, begin to unwind as feels comfortable for you, even coming onto your back. Maybe just taking a pedal of the feet, if you will. I like to do a little air pedal sometimes. Pausing for just a moment to observe how you feel. Notice what's happening in the body. In particular, notice what's going on with the breath. And as you're ready, start to roll over onto your left side here, propping yourself up into your left hand. Each side can be very different. Feel free to bring your pillow up right behind you. You can also use this as a place for the shoulder to rest. Take your top leg, your right leg, extend it out. Experiment with it, pressing the foot into the ground, whether you press more into the pinky side of the foot or the big toe side of the foot. Bending the bottom leg, we're coming into cat, pulling its tail, using a strap or towel as an extension, staying here or allowing the body to twist and come down either to the pillow or to the ground. Up to you. About 3 minutes here. And again, work with where this side is at. Try not to compare it to the other side and force it to do exactly what the other side did. Each side could need individual things. So we'll work with that. As you're ready on your next exhale, slowly unwind. Taking any final movements you need before finding your way to Savasana, final resting pose. You can place something underneath your head if you'd like, maybe even underneath the knees. Use your blanket if you have one for warmth or even for more weight. Same thing for the blocks. If you'd like a little bit more weight on the body, you can always place a block lightly on the chest or even on the belly. And be mindful if you've just eaten or anything like that. Don't squish the belly. Same thing with the chest. Closing the eyes or finding a soft point for your gaze. And seeing if you can let go here just a little bit more. Letting the body feel supported by the earth. Breath. Return to its natural rhythm if it's not already there. As each and every muscle in the body begins to turn off, feel the mind start to soften, the roof of the mouth rise, even the jaw release from the hinges. Feel free to stay here as long as you'd like. And as you're ready, start to reawaken the body, reawaken the senses. Take the mouth, smells, touch of the ground on your skin, inviting movement that calls to you as you gently transition to a comfortable seat at the top of the mat. When you find your comfortable seat, just pause for a few beats, a few breaths, noticing how you feel. There's no right or wrong answer. Just note it. As we lift our hands to our heart space, we honor the intention or focus that we may have set at the beginning of the practice. And I invite you to bow your heads in a moment of gratitude, thanking yourself for making time for your mat, community in this virtual space. We'll lift our thumbs to the space between the eyes, the third eye center, and once again honor the indigenous teachers who come before us. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om, peace, peace, peace. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I hope you have a fabulous Sunday and a great rest of the week. See y'all soon.